Welcome to part 2 of the NASCAR Iceberg. This is where things really go to dark secrets and buried stories in the sport. Once again, shout out to kvapilnation for making the iceberg, and he's helped me out a lot with this video. Also, shout out to RawGator coming on and being a part of this project. We'll start right where we left off at Tier 3. This tier is going to cover a lot of scams and oddities, and start to get into some of the conspiracies and theories that aren't talked about often. During a 2004 Busch Series qualifying session, a huge inflatable orange rolled out onto the racetrack. They sent safety trucks out to retrieve it, and it was pretty hilarious. Before qualifying runs for the 2007 Daytona 500, NASCAR found a foreign substance in the intake manifold of Michael Waltrip's car. NASCAR gave them a chance to remove it and go through inspection once again. They found the substance again and impounded the car. NASCAR said that this substance was like rocket fuel and punished the team severely. NASCAR tossed Waltrip's crew chief, docked them 100 points, and fined them $100,000. This was by far the greatest disaster of a race in the modern era. Due to problems with Goodyear's tires, NASCAR was forced to throw a competition caution every 10 to 12 laps if a tire hadn't exploded yet. Almost a third of the race was run under caution, with green flag runs averaging 9 laps. This embarrassment was witnessed by over 200,000 fans and is often regarded as the death of the Brickyard 400. Obika Racing started as an Xfinity Series program in 2015 and seemed to be a perfectly normal startup operation. They had a couple somewhat reputable drivers racing for them, but they were in the worst equipment on the grid and eventually became one of the last start-and-park teams. Of their 78 starts in the Xfinity Series, they had 5 lead lap finishes. Their Cup Series team was even more of a disaster. After racing 4 of the last 6 races of the 2018 season, it looked like Obika got their act together, especially since they announced a full-time season in 2019 with Tanner Berryhill. They never even made it to the track in 2019 and haven't competed since. The Rick Ware Empire refers to the fact that Rick Ware is in every corner of auto racing. Despite being a laughingstock in NASCAR, Rick Ware's IndyCar team is highly competitive. I mean, look at the list of motorsports the team has fielded entries for. This simply refers to drivers from road racing backgrounds who really only show up to road course races. This used to be very popular, but has since gone away almost entirely. In October of 2019, 310 birds crashed into the NASCAR Hall of Fame building, leaving about a third of them dead. I think this is referring to the fact that this was a COVID season, and NASCAR was able to be the first major sport back from the pandemic. It was also sort of a lame duck year for the sport, as the next-gen car was pushed back a year. The schedule was wild, and it was the most risk NASCAR took in that aspect in the modern era. These are just the foreign series for NASCAR, for Canada, Mexico, and Europe respectively. Trickle competed in nearly 500 NASCAR-sanctioned races over the course of more than 30 years. He is also held as one of the greatest short-track racers ever, reeling in an estimated 1,200 feature wins through his career. In 2013, the racing world was shocked after he tragically took his own life. Lefty is a super talented graphic designer who makes a lot of custom paint schemes and is a great follow on Twitter or Instagram. I'm sure this is referring to either personal issues or social media controversy, but since that's none of our business, we'll move along. Tabasco hot sauce plunged into NASCAR in 1997 with International Sports Management Racing and driver Todd Bodine. In 1998, after the first 13 races, the team DNQ'd 8 times, including the Daytona 500. They let go of Todd and eventually landed Darrell Waltrip for the Brickyard 400, but the team did not let the sponsor know. The team would also be bought out by Tyler Jet Motorsports, another significant part of the story that wasn't told to Tabasco. Tyler Jet had also bought out Darrell Waltrip's own team, so in a way he was racing in his own cars again. The team then switched from Pontiac to Chevrolet, and this was the last straw, and the sponsor wanted to go back to Pontiacs and Bodine as the driver, but Darrell Waltrip ended up continuing as the driver. Tabasco left NASCAR for good and never returned. There's also an article linked in the description below of the full story behind it. Late in the round of 12 elimination race at Talladega in 2015, Kevin Harvick stated that he had an engine problem. After being passed on the restart by Trevor Bayne, Harvick completely took out Bayne and caused a pile-up that locked him into the next round. Drivers flamed Harvick after the race, accusing him of intentionally causing the wreck, but NASCAR took no action. With 25 laps to go, Wendell Scott took the lead of the race and cruised to the finish. However, running 2 laps down, second-place runner Buck Baker took the checkered flag and was awarded the race win. 2 hours after end of the race, Scott was declared the winner after he protested. Many, including Scott's family, believe this was a scheme by NASCAR to award Baker the win and then let the crowd leave before declaring Wendell Scott the winner due to racism surrounding the sport. 4 weeks later, Scott was given the winner's check and a replica trophy. While making their way past the lap car, Ron Hornaday and Kyle Busch made contact and resulted in Busch getting into the wall. To everyone's surprise, Busch was fuming and mad enough to wreck Hornaday under caution. Kyle Busch was suspended for the week, missing both the Nationwide and Cup Series. This also took Ron Hornaday out of championship contention. In August of 2014, during a sprint car race, Kevin Ward Jr. and Tony Stewart had an incident. After the crash, Ward was on track and was tragically struck by Stewart's car, unfortunately killing him. Stewart missed 3 NASCAR races afterwards to grieve and didn't step foot in a sprint car for 2 years. Ward's family maintains the claim that Stewart hit Ward on purpose even until this day. It was just a sad situation. Shane Mill was a promising NASCAR talent who many look back at as a bust. His career ended in 2006 after failing 3 substance abuse tests and was banned for life. After rebuilding his career in USAC, he was paralyzed in a crash in October of 2010. He was initially given a 10% chance to live after the crash while he was in a coma, but lived and even has regained some movements in his limbs. This is the most iconic pre-race prayer in NASCAR history. NASCAR started racing at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park back in 2013 and produced a crazy finish pretty much every time the Truck Series raced there. During the 2004 race at Watkins Glen, Tony Stewart was having stomach problems. The team wanted road course ringer Boris Said to fill in, but Stewart refused, pooped himself, and won the race. Iconic. NASCAR Chasm is essentially a meme maker for NASCAR.com. He's a great follow on Twitter and posts a lot of content for NASCAR.com. NASCAR ran a testing session in 2021 at Martinsville with racers driving on rain tires for the first time on an oval. NASCAR admitted this could be a total disaster and essentially a waste of time, but both Chris Buescher and Kyle Larson gave positive feedback to the officials. There hasn't been much news on this since, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this idea randomly pop up again in 4 years. This was a race in New Hampshire in which Jeff Burton led all 300 laps despite not sitting on the pole. No one has led every lap in a race since then. The DC Solar scandal is a complete rabbit hole, but essentially DC Solar was a huge investor in NASCAR, sponsoring an Xfinity ride full-time and sponsoring multiple races. However, in December of 2018, their headquarters was raided by the FBI after allegations of a Ponzi scheme within the company, and these allegations proved to be true. This obviously led to their sponsorship deals falling through, which led to Chip Ganassi pulling the plug on his Xfinity program. Ross Chastain was supposed to take the seat for the 2019 season and was left scrambling for a ride. Carl Long was a backmarker in the late 2000s, racing on a tight budget, racing for a family-owned team. At Charlotte Motor Speedway in 2009, Long was caught with an oversized engine. His team was suspended for 12 races, docked 200 points, and was fined $200,000, all NASCAR records. This resulted in Long exiting the sport until he came back with his own Xfinity team in 2017. Randomly in 2017, Carl Long decided to show up to Kansas to enter a cup race for the first time since his engine penalty. He sported the sponsor Wiedwerks, a vape shop that sold THC products. When NASCAR went to research the company, they couldn't find any information, so they asked Long. NASCAR couldn't find any information because he had misspelled the company's name on his approval request. Long said it was a vape company, leaving out the fact it sold cannabis products. So after finding out they sold products containing THC, NASCAR did not allow the sponsor. This is just a terrible crash that no one really has footage of. I have a couple of videos on this wreck trying to dissect it on my channel if you're interested. This was essentially NASCAR's birthplace, with many unofficial races in the 30s and 40s before becoming a staple of the calendar for the first 10 NASCAR seasons. The track closed because to draw and hold large crowds, NASCAR would need real venues and grandstands. Allegedly, Stewart-Haas Racing promised a 4 times return on investment to Nature's Bakery, a company that signed a primary sponsorship deal with Danica Patrick for 3 seasons. Early into the contract, Nature's Bakery was not happy with their return on investment, or Danica. Danica was not performing well, and she had allegedly refused to promote their products on social media. Nature's Bakery backed out of the deal, then SHR sued them for breaching the contract, demanding $31 million. Nature's Bakery countersued for failing to deliver on promises. Eventually, the 2 parties settled, and Nature's Bakery stayed on the car. After the Las Vegas weekend in 2018, drivers noticed something interesting about Kevin Harvick's car. The rear window was flexing, creating more downforce on the car as more air was getting to the spoiler. A Reddit user posted a picture of it, allowing the issue to get a lot of traction. NASCAR obviously put a stop to this, but Kevin Harvick kept the win. Digger was a CGI animated gopher that was introduced to cater towards the younger audience back in 2009. There was a Digger-themed camera angle during the race and short cartoons during the pre-race. It was hated by the fans, and there was even an article posted back in 2009 by Nate Ryan that stated that NASCAR executives were fighting over if Digger was the sole reason for a 13% ratings drop that season. That is absurd. Kevin LePage had a NASCAR career that spanned 34 years. He was a true journeyman driver. This is probably in reference to his incident in a 2008 Nationwide Series race when he blended off pit road directly into a pack of cars. This is also known as LePaging the field. This was NASCAR's first race at Talladega Superspeedway. It was horrible. After noticing horrible tire wear and blown tires throughout tests and practice, drivers boycotted the race. All notable stars of the sport withdrew from the race, and NASCAR did nothing to stop this, and even allowed cars from other series to enter the race, even though they were much slower. This led to only 3 cars finishing within 8 laps of the leader, and more than 20 cars of the 36 retiring with a mechanical failure. Also, ticket sales were so bad that Bill France was offering tickets to the 1970 Daytona 500 if fans bought a ticket to the race. There are a lot more details, but it's been covered well by a lot of people in other videos, so check those out. Kevin Conway raced in the Cup Series for Front Row Motorsports in 2010. Basically, Extends was a male enhancement product that made false claims to their product because it wasn't scientifically proven. Their company was sued for false marketing, so the sponsor, out $6 million now, didn't have enough money to pay Front Row Motorsports. Front Row Motorsports then sued Extends, and Kevin Conway jumped to Robbie Gordon's team later in the year, and they didn't pay him either. This was because Gordon hopped in the car in Conway's place. However, Gordon made Extends aware of the driver change, and they agreed to it. It was only after Gordon completed the races that Extends decided not to pay him. This led to another lawsuit, as Gordon then sued the company as well. Entering turn 1 of the first lap of the 2001 All-Star race, it started to rain. The drivers lost control and many drivers were wrecked. The blame went to NASCAR, and they made it up to the drivers. NASCAR restarted the race and allowed the drivers that were taken out in the incident to race their backup cars. Jeff Gordon, who was taken out in the pileup, would win the race in a backup car. Aero Warriors is a nickname for the 4 muscle cars developed specifically to race in NASCAR by Dodge, Plymouth, and Mercury for the 1969 and 1970 racing seasons. They were so fast, but the speed outweighed the tire technology and safety at the time, and this also led to the Aero Wars, but we will get into that later in the video. Kurt Busch and Jimmy Spencer had one of the most heated rivalries in all of NASCAR. I mean, they hated each other. They had numerous on-track run-ins. The battle got physical in 2003 when Spencer went into the garage area and landed some punches on Busch, leading to a 1-race suspension for Spencer. This is the race that many scenes from the movie Days of Thunder were filmed in. There's a link to a Reddit thread in the description of the video that shows more information and timestamps during the race that appear in the movie. To round off Tier 3, my friend RawGator is going to talk about a handful of topics.
In late 2003, NASCAR finalized a deal with Nextel to make them the title sponsor for 10 years, beginning in 2004. As part of the $750 million deal, NASCAR signed an exclusivity agreement, making Nextel the only wireless communications associated with events at the track, including race team sponsors. This agreement didn't affect existing contracts, which allowed Cingular to continue to sponsor the 31 RCR entry. However, in 2005, Cingular's parent company acquired AT&T and rebranded itself to AT&T, leaving the Cingular brand completely dead. After this, NASCAR notified RCR that they would not be permitted to change the brand name or logo of the 31 car. Before the 2007 season, RCR submitted a paint scheme that featured the AT&T brand and logo on the car anyway, and ended up being rejected by NASCAR. This led to AT&T suing NASCAR and NASCAR countersuing. NASCAR and AT&T eventually reached a settlement and allowed AT&T to sponsor Jeff Burton's car until the end of 2008 anyway. Immediately following the rain-shortened Fall Pocono race in 2012, lightning struck around the track and struck fans in the parking lot, killing 1 and injuring 9 more. The race was stopped at 4:54 p.m., and the fatal strike occurred just 5 minutes later at 5:01. A jury ruled in favor of NASCAR and Pocono, clearing them of any lawsuits. NASCAR decided anyway to change their procedures for lightning after this incident, delaying any session and evacuating grandstands for lightning within 8 miles of the track. Brian France, who was the CEO of NASCAR from 2003 to 2018, pleaded guilty to driving while intoxicated in August of 2018. After running a stop sign, Brian was pulled over. Initially, he was arrested due to possession of 5 oxycodone pills, but was not prosecuted due to a valid subscription. His blood alcohol level was found to be more than double of the legal limit and was ordered to complete 100 hours of community service and undergo alcohol counseling. BK Racing was founded in early 2012. The BK didn't officially stand for anything, but Burger King became a partner 6 days after the team's inception. Although Burger King had no official ownership of the team, it's likely BK Racing investors created the team knowing a deal with the fast food franchise was on the horizon. This is referencing the finish of the spring race, where Elliott Sadler and Joey Logano came together and crashed just before the finish line, leaving Brennan Poole to earn his first career victory. Except he didn't. Nearly 10 minutes after the finish, and after Brennan Poole had celebrated, NASCAR ruled that the caution flag had actually been thrown just hundreds of feet before the finish line and gave the win to Elliott Sadler. This was such a strange moment because NASCAR normally hesitates to throw the caution on the last lap at all. So why would they throw it for a crash that happened in the tri-oval of the final lap? This win would have meant so much for Poole's career, but he now regularly misses Xfinity races driving for Mike Harmon Racing. This conspiracy comes from the highest profile driver somehow winning the pole for the Daytona 500, stretching from 2013 to 2019. The main case for this theory is Danica Patrick, where in her first Daytona 500 attempt, won her first and the only pole position in her entire career. The next year, rookie Austin Dillon won the pole in the return of NASCAR's famous number 3 car, and didn't win another for more than 2 years. The list goes on with Jeff Gordon in his last season, Chase Elliott, and many others. This is another controversial finish. Regan Smith was going for his first career win, but was forced under the double yellow line. He made the pass stick and crossed the finish line in first place. Upon review, NASCAR determined that Smith should be penalized and they handed the win to Tony Stewart, who many thought should have been the one penalized instead. The vortex theory is a theory proposed by Darrell Waltrip. The theory basically says that if NASCAR is racing on an oval track, the cars can create a rotational disturbance that repels oncoming rainstorms. This is in no way scientifically proven, and really most people just laugh at it, but there is an actual ongoing debate in the NASCAR community whether this is true or not.
Tier 4 is much like Tier 3 in terms of content, but describes events that are much more unknown or darker, even getting into some conspiracies. In Kurt's second race back following a suspension, he was set to win the 2015 Fontana Spring Race. However, a debris caution came out with just 2 laps to go. Many conspiracy theorists believe it was a ploy by NASCAR to get Kurt Busch to lose the race. On the final lap, as Keselowski was about to make a move on Kurt for the win, Greg Biffle crashed and there was no caution, providing further evidence for this theory. This gave Brad Keselowski the opportunity to pass Kurt Busch and win the race, and Keselowski did just that. In 1956, NASCAR was racing a dirt race at the Tulsa Fairgrounds. However, there were multiple incidents in the first laps of the race because of terrible lighting and high dust levels. Bizarrely, Lee hopped out of his car, climbed up the flag stand, attempted to grab the red flag, and fought the flagman. Petty was able to snatch the red flag and use it to red flag the race. Fans began to riot, local authorities came, then the sponsors convened. The fans left, followed by the drivers, and NASCAR pretended like this never happened. Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the next Daytona race, the Pepsi 400, after his father passed away tragically. Many people think this is enough to claim it's rigged, but the way he did it was even more sketchy. He passed groups of cars by himself on the outside lane, an impossible feat considering the cars on the bottom lane were in the draft. This is more of his car had extra power and NASCAR was in on it, not so much everyone pulling over and letting him win. Of course, there have been illegal cars in the past, but people believe NASCAR was in on it, not just the team. One of the most vocal drivers about this was Jimmy Spencer. Ted Musgrave was fighting for the Truck Series Championship in 2003. Entering Homestead, the last race, Musgrave was 26 points back from Brendan Gaughan, so he would need a good result and he needed Brendan to do bad. Team owner of Musgrave, Jimmy Smith, was entering 2 to 3 trucks per race weekend. However, that changed in the season finale when he entered 5 trucks. It was Tyler Walker's 3rd race of the season, and Marty Houston and P.J. Jones's first races of the season. An interesting time to enter all of these trucks. Well, suspicion grew even larger when Marty Houston wrecked and took out championship leader Brendan Gaughan. Musgrave's teammates were racing the other competitors really hard during the race. In the end, it looked like Musgrave won the championship, but he jumped the final restart and was black flagged, handing the championship to Travis Kvapil. Back in 2003, Bill Davis was fielding Dodges in the Cup Series. However, he had a contract with Toyota to field his truck teams. Bill Davis extended his contract with Toyota to field its Cup car when the manufacturer entered the sport in 2007, about 4 years down the road. Bill Davis Racing gave confidential information of Dodges to Toyota, resulting Dodge suing the team for $6.5 million in damages and breach of contract, and ultimately winning the case. Second Chance Motorsports was a team in the Nationwide Series in the early 2010s. They acquired racer Jennifer Jo Cobb, and she wanted to race the full race at Bristol in early 2011. They told her no, they were going to start the car, then almost immediately park it, contrary to what the team told her before, and she walked away from the car 5 minutes before the race started. Further, owner Rick Russell accused Jennifer Jo Cobb of stealing $16,000 of race car parts from his facility. Russell found the parts in a storage bin used by Cobb, and she claims she had no idea how they got there. But apparently the storage unit had Russell's name on it, but it was just with Cobb's stuff. Tim Andrews would be the replacement driver for Cobb at Bristol, and after the race, owner Rick Russell told Andrews and the rest of the team to find a way home, and Russell has not been heard from since. After this horrible wreck, there was a significant drop in Johnson's performance, and he never won a race again. This is thought to be the wreck that effectively ended his career. The 2007 Food City 500 was the debut of NASCAR's Car of Tomorrow. Kyle Busch won the race, but stated in a post-race interview that he hated the new car and it drove horribly. However, just 6 months later, Dodge exited the sport as Brad Keselowski won a championship for them. During the pandemic, NASCAR races were obviously postponed. NASCAR went virtual with the top stars of American motorsports racing, iRacing, on national television. This served as sort of a substitute for actual racing. Fan favorite and race-winning driver from NASCAR's 2020 Pro Invitational Series was not invited back to the 2021 installment. Further, he raced in every Cup event in the 2020 and 2021 season up to that point, and was the only Cup driver left out. This led to an outcry of people using this hashtag. However, it did have a happy ending, as Brad Keselowski stepped down and let Timmy race in his spot. Eric Almirola qualified Denny Hamlin's car at the 2007 AT&T 250 at the Milwaukee Mile. Hamlin was in Sonoma for the Cup weekend, but intended to run the Nationwide Series race as well. When Denny Hamlin could not make it back for the start of the race, Eric Almirola started the event. However, the sponsor obviously wanted Hamlin in the car. On lap 59, Hamlin had arrived and was ready to race as they made a driver swap. Almirola had led 43 laps and was understandably frustrated when he was asked to get out and left the track immediately. Hamlin ran rest of the race and crossed the line first. In a NASCAR rule, it states the driver who starts the race will be awarded the race win, so Eric Almirola was declared the race winner, even though he just ran 59 of the 250 laps. I think this is just referencing the 1991 race, when Ricky Rudd bumped Davey Allison out of the way to win the race. However, taking the checkered flag, Rudd was black flagged and it handed Allison the win. This was very controversial because the bump and run was common at ovals, but this time there is a time penalty for it. This is probably in reference to how some NASCAR show cars looked, or the random out-of-place places they appear. Sometimes there's something off about the look of them, or new paint schemes on old bodies, or they're just like a really bad replica. Or they can be sitting in your local Walmart. Paulie Haraka's first and only Cup start was highlighted by a pit road incident before the race even started. I couldn't really find much on him, but he graduated from Stanford's business school and is an extremely successful entrepreneur that remains as the only former NASCAR driver to give a TED Talk presentation. This refers to the events following Tony Stewart's success from open wheel racing to NASCAR. He found great success in NASCAR, and others ended up following. Open-wheel drivers invaded NASCAR around the 2007 season, which included drivers like AJ Allmendinger, Juan Pablo Montoya, Dario Franchitti, and Sam Hornish Jr. JD owns the record of the most starts in NASCAR's top division without a win, 653, which places him 26th all-time in starts. He tragically died after a crash at Watkins Glen. Beginning in 2016, NASCAR made a rule for the Truck Series, where a mandatory caution would be put out after 20 minutes of green flag racing. It was so horrible and gimmicky that most people have honestly forgotten about it. NASCAR got rid of the caution clock after the season with the introduction of stages. The clock only expired 19 times the entire season. I was at this race, unfortunately. I mean, it was my first ever NASCAR race. It was pretty boring, but it's on this list because of another reason. The traffic was so bad that the majority of fans missed the start of the race. Then, an issue popped up where there was not enough parking for all of the fans, and a lot of them missed the race entirely. NASCAR, of course, offered free tickets to other races for the fans that missed it, but this destroyed attendance for Kentucky Speedway's short history in NASCAR. I remember leaving the track and there were fans still trying to get in after it was over. There are some paint schemes that were announced, but never raced or even made it onto cars. There is a Twitter account, @LostSchemes, that posts these with their history. I'm not sure what the deal is about these, but these diecasts are apparently rare and a lot of them are going for big money on eBay. I just looked at one, and Brian Vickers' 2011 164 scale car is going for $81 with multiple bids. Most of them around the time, you're talking like maybe $5. On the higher end, like 10, 15. So that was news to me. The first nationwide race in Montreal was controversial. In the final laps, Robbie Gordon passed Marcus Ambrose for the lead as the caution was coming out. Ambrose seemingly then turned Gordon on purpose, then Gordon rushed back to second place. NASCAR determined Gordon's pass on Ambrose was illegal because it was under the yellow flag and ordered Gordon back to 17th place. Not only didn't he get the lead, he didn't even get to stay in second. Gordon refused and restarted behind Ambrose. He then took race leader Ambrose out of the race. Gordon finished first, was obviously disqualified, and that handed the win to Kevin Harvick. While Kevin Harvick was doing burnouts, Gordon did burnouts right beside him, and it resulted in a $50,000 fine. This refers to the wars of aerodynamics between Dodge, Plymouth, Ford, and Mercury for the 1969 and 70 seasons. I was initially going to add in a lot of information with this, but I couldn't really fit it all in, but there's some great videos out on that, and I think you guys should check them out. Goodyear and Hoosier had 2 tire wars in NASCAR from 1988 to 1989 and one in 1994. Goodyear came out on top and they supply NASCAR to this day, but Hoosier supplied ARCA with tires from 1995 to 2015. Continental AG acquired Hoosier in 2016, so obviously they don't provide them with tires anymore. There are some great videos on the wars, and once again, it would be way too much to cover right here. Instead of the conventional green-white checkered finish in NASCAR, NASCAR implemented the overtime line in 2017. If cars made it to the overtime line on a restart that extended the race, then the next flag would end the race, caution, or checkered. Many races ended with 2 laps to go, and it was just kind of an unneeded thing, just extra rules to make stuff extra complicated, and it resulted in a lot of confusing finishes. NASCAR got rid of the overtime line mid-season. Drivers used to practice at road courses like Road Atlanta in preparation for road course races. The wreck is referring to Brad Keselowski, who lost his brakes and had a horrible crash, injuring himself. NASCAR is a website owned and operated by Brock Beard, which focuses on the lowest placing drivers every week instead of the top finishers. Brock has a great YouTube channel where he makes videos on seemingly random but interesting backmarkers. Texas Motor Speedway was promised a second date, but it did not happen in 2002. Before they went to trial in 2004, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated and the International Speedway Corporation came to a settlement. Texas would get the 2 dates that they wanted, and ISC would sell Rockingham to SMI, and Rockingham was completely removed from the schedule. Texas has had 2 dates ever since and is still a hot topic of conversation. This was a group qualifying session where the rules were not explained well at all and ultimately left a lot of confusion. Drivers scrambled in the last moments of the first round just to record a lap or have to make a single car run without the aid of the draft. In some instances, drivers had their laps disallowed by NASCAR because they failed to cross the start-finish line before time expired. It was just super messy. Petty's last win came in dramatic fashion, racing back to the win with 2 laps to go as a caution came out. There were no green-white checkers, and there wasn't time to clean up the wreck. He ultimately won, of course, but President Ronald Reagan was in attendance, and the 2 met each other afterwards. Reagan also gave the command for the race. There have been a lot of tragic aviation accidents in NASCAR, some that we've already discussed. There have been a lot of accidents that didn't prove fatal, like Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s back in 2020, when a part of the landing gear failed and the plane had a hard landing and burst into flames. Eric McClure was a driver that passed away just last year in 2021 after suffering from health issues, including diagnosis of a severe musculoskeletal disorder. The main cause for this is jerking movements such as auto accidents. Many people point back to his horrific crash back in 2012 at Talladega that left him in the hospital as a cause for this disorder. So a NASCAR crash potentially contributed to his early death. John West-Townley was a former NASCAR race winner. He reportedly attacked his ex-wife and her apparent boyfriend with a hatchet at her home on October 2nd, 2021. The boyfriend shot and killed Townley. This was the first time in the modern era that NASCAR mandated numbers to be moved from the center of the car. However, the numbers in the 2020 All-Star race were pushed towards the back of the car. Now, in 2022, NASCAR mandated the numbers to be pushed to the front of the car. Looking back on it, those schemes look really weird. Joseph Lombard was a NASCAR YouTuber and was a pioneer of NASCAR gaming. He sponsored some Xfinity Series cars with his brand Lombard Bros Gaming and was one of the first NASCAR YouTubers turned media members. Unfortunately, he was exposed for messaging underage girls and quickly left the public scene. On the last lap of the 2018 Daytona 500, Bubba Wallace and Denny Hamlin wrecked after the finish line in a battle for second place. They made contact earlier in the lap, which resulted in Hamlin's tire going down. They had a heated argument outside of the media center, and Denny let out his frustrations on Twitter. Their relationship was so torn that Denny kicked Bubba off of his charity teams. Now, Bubba races for him at 2311 Racing. Race Jam, a spin-off of popular movie Space Jam, almost happened in 2001, starring Jeff Gordon, but it evidently fell through. These are the places, including exhibition races, that have hosted Cup Series races outside of North America. At the end of the 2010 season, the third from last race was at Texas. When Jeff Gordon crashed out, his pit crew pitted for the 48 car as the 48 car lost positions on 4 of the 7 stops up to that point in the race. For the last 2 races of the season, it was announced Gordon's crew would pit for Jimmy Johnson's number 48 car, as that was the better crew, and Jimmy Johnson was going for the championship while Gordon had fallen out of contention. NASCAR's website has an article to the 49 best official DNF reasons in NASCAR, which is what I think this is referencing. The article will be listed in the description below, and a lot of them are really funny. Some of my personal favorites are Too Slow, PJ Jones, Pocono 2010. Unexplained, Lloyd Dane, Las Vegas, 1955. And Did Not Finish, Marshall Teague, Daytona Beach, 1950. Alright guys, that is the end of part 2 of the NASCAR Iceberg. We have been through tiers 1 through 4, and we have 5 through 7 left, so there's going to be 2 more parts to this. Next part we're going to look at part 5 and 6, and then the last part we are going to take a step back and go really in depth for tier 7. Shout out to all of you guys that have been in my Twitter DMs helping me out with stuff. Kilburn Caleb has helped me out a lot. RawGator for stepping on. And of course kvapilnation for making the iceberg. And he's helped me out with a lot of information. So those guys, huge shout out to them. Anyways guys, that was it for this video. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.